agencies as well as other law enforcement personnel or the public in general. And so the answer to that question is that, and as I started with, we are a sanctuary city. We follow state law and we follow and believe very deeply in our sanctuary city policies, which is we do not gather and share information to federal agencies for the purpose of immigration enforcement. That is not behavior that we are engaged in. As far as the way that we share data out, that's why we really tried to work through that in the slides. You saw that in ALPR data, there are ways that other law enforcement agencies can view our data. That is only with a signed agreement. That is only local agencies. That is with our oversight and auditing of what they're collecting for. They are also prohibited by state law from sharing with federal agencies. For other types of data, like our fixed cameras, and would be our drone recorded evidence and footage, that information is only available to those outside of our police department on a case-by-case basis, with them providing a law enforcement purpose that fit within our use policies and that would have to be vetted through us before we release them. Agencies as well as other law enforcement personnel or the public in general. And so the answer to that question is that, and as I started with, we are a sanctuary city. We follow state law and we follow and believe very deeply in our sanctuary city policies, which is we do not gather and share information to federal agencies for the purpose of immigration enforcement. That is not behavior that we are engaged in. As far as the way that we share data out, that's why we really tried to work through that in the slides. You saw that in ALPR data, there are ways that other law enforcement agencies can view our data. That is only with a signed agreement. That is only local agencies. That is with our oversight and auditing of what they're collecting for. They are also prohibited by state law from sharing with federal agencies. For other types of data, like our fixed cameras, and would be our drone recorded evidence and footage, that information is only available to those outside of our police department on a case-by-case basis, with them providing a law enforcement purpose that fit within our use policies and that would have to be vetted through us before we release them. Back with law camera. There are many agencies that have looked at viable vendors and have not found other viable vendors, and know that the infrastructure that an ecosystem that Flock provides and the fact that all other local law enforcement agencies are using Flock continue to maintain their relationship with them. I have to make decisions that are best for our community, best for the safety, best to uphold our values, our privacy, and again, overlay and ensure that our contract language is tight enough that if they are not following the things that we value, we can exit that contract. But absent that, and we see that they are the best vendor, it is our obligation to bring forth a recommendation to council about what we see as the best vendor and allow them to make the decision about how they want to proceed with that.
There were discussions about considering a non-Flock vendor for fixed cameras. Why has the city come back to Flock as the preferred vendor?
So the question is, why did we come back to Flock? And if those of you who recall in the fall, we originally brought our contract forward for fixed cameras for approval of that contract. In the summer last year, we had brought forth our policies, our use policies and acquisitions, and had been approved. City manager and I discussed some of the news stories that were out, and we wanted to do our due diligence and look at that. So we did explore other vendors, and we did want to have a community conversation. And what I can share is that the other vendors out there that had the CGIS and SOC 2 protections in place, that did not have cameras that they build on site. They were third-party vendors with cameras. There were a lot of limitations around electrical power. So finding a camera that can do solar powered, that has reliable hits, reliable information and data streams, has the data protection and privacy, and is a vendor that can handle the load of what we need as far as the number of cameras and the outputs, and the transparency pieces. There are not a lot of other vendors out there. The closest we found was Axon, and the information that we received from Axon was that they weren't ready for this step of technology yet. And so we're recommending, or our research has led us back to Flock and the Condor camera, because we know it also works in conjunction well with the ALPR technology, of which Flock is the leader in that technology. and also happens to have one of the front runners of best privacy technology and transparency in the DFR world. So it's the use of mobile ALPR readers. And so just a point of clarification, we have had mobile ALPR readers for several years. Those are on our parking enforcement vehicles. They have a very specific use policy that doesn't have to do with law enforcement response in the same way that our fixed ALPR cameras do. Currently, we have council authorization to have our ALPRs in fixed locations that are clearly stated by council. If we wanted to expand that to a mobile license plate reader, we would enter into the STO process to get clear permission from council to do that. So the question is, why do I mention the law and contracts in the same time I'm talking about technologies and vendors that we're trying to implement?
Not the question.
And the answer is simple.
That wasn't a question.
No.
Repeat the question.
Breaches. The
That was a
breaches of
different-
that.
The question is, why do you keep mentioning contracts and laws to prevent abuse when they have a history of breaching both contract and law? Why
Flock.
would law enforcement choose to work with law-breaking companies? And then this card's similar question, but they
Okay.
mentioned flock specifically.
So why I mention this is simple. And I said this earlier. What we read about in the newspaper, and no offense to anybody in here who's with the media, does not always necessarily have all the facts. There are sometimes different facts that are available in different sources, right? And there are different ways that we can vet facts. And so when I see an article in the newspaper that tells me something happened with Flock, and I think I might be susceptible to that same issue, I'm doing a couple things. It's contacting the agency that's having the issue potentially and finding out what really happened. What are they reporting? What are they seeing? Talking to our vendor, in that case, Flock specifically, like, hey, we're getting reports that X, Y, and Z is happening. That was in another state, but can you remind me, or can you assure me that how I read my contract and how I see my state law and how my sanctuary city policy reads and our contract reads are in alignment with what I believe? Because that sounded different, and we reconcile those facts. And so I'm talking about I'm talking about a contract, and I'm talking about state law because they are our guiding principles. A contract would allow us to exit a relationship with a vendor if we felt they were not meeting up to the expectations that we have. They're not working within our policy, they're not working within state law, they are not working within our sanctuary city values. And so I'm mentioning those things because those are the tools by which we would exit that relationship with the vendor if the vendor wasn't behaving in a way that I have evidence that I believe that in our jurisdiction is acting against what our policies are, my council's direction is, and state law is.
Documents and Public Records Act requests take months to get a response. Why should the community believe that we will be able to access documents related to these technologies?
So the question was, someone feels that they don't have access to documents and wants to know why this would be different. So first I would start and say that it is my intent and my direction to staff in this building that when we have releasable documents, both for public requests or through DPA processes or PAB processes, we absolutely release those. We also release a significant amount of information that is publicly available information on our Transparency Hub. The things that we don't release are the things that we, like I said, have a value of privacy on, have a responsibility of confidentiality. State law prohibits it. It's part of an ongoing investigation, and it could be a detriment to that investigation to share those things. The transparency hubs that we have, that Flock has, that you see with the DFR with the flight patterns, those and the real-time call log module that we launched late last year. Those are all the ways that everything that's publicly available, we get out as fast as we can. And you'll notice on our Transparency Hub that not only do we provide analysis of some of that data, we're providing you with raw data sets. Because it's not just us sharing what we think we want people to hear, it's us giving people the data and the ability to look at that data and make their own analysis around it.
A couple questions.
So the question was whether if a agency or any individual served us with a lawful warrant.
A FISA warrant specifically.
I can talk about that specifically, but I must talk about it generally. If any agency served a warrant on us for a seizure of our evidence, or something that we have in our possession. That is gonna go through a process both with our city attorney's office, in consultation with the department, to review whether, one, that agency has jurisdiction and authority to make that. What court process granted that warrant? You know, what are our revenues and ready? So we will not be releasing things merely because a warrant exists if we don't think there's validity in the warrant, or is there a rightful process for us to move forward to address whether it's in violation of our own local or state ordinances.
A FISA warrant is secret.
So if someone hands me a secret warrant and I'm not sure how I can act on it, I'm gonna work in consultation with the city attorney's office to determine what my appropriate
It
courses of
won't,
action
it won't go
are.
to you, it'll go to FLOC.
You'll go to FLOC.
Yeah.
You
have
don't
no
know about
control.
FISA warrants.
So-
You need to learn about FISA
Okay,
warrants.
again, I'm gonna ask the decorum around questions, and I'm gonna honor this follow-up question, because I know we're gonna get there anyway. So, again, we hold data. The data is owned by us. Our contracting processes with FLOC is very clear that it is not their data to release. In our contracting process, it is very clear that if a request comes in from any agency for our evidence, our materials, our footage, they are obligated to present us with that, and we are responsible for releasing it. So FLOC has told us their intention is not to release anything out of their confines, but is to say, we are not by contract, we are not the owner and holder of this information. The Berkeley Police Department is. Please provide this warrant, please provide this whatever to the Berkeley Police Department for production of said evidence. At that point, I will go through all the things I just shared there. All right, next question, please.
There's a couple of questions about, just generally the history of FLOC and, I guess I've had some data breaches in the past. Or, troubling practices. Can you speak a little bit about?
Yeah, lying.
Yeah, so the question is, can you talk about the history of FLOC? I can share that, we read the newspaper also. So we understand that there are stories out there. Some information we've been able to verify and know is factual. Other information, we've received other information that lets us think that it might not be completely accurate. So our obligation and responsibility is, and often we use news stories in the same way that you do, as a starting point for us to then explore an issue. So when we've seen articles that bring up issues around FLOC, which is a vendor for us for ALPR, and is a vendor we're considering both for PTZ cameras and for DFR, is to do our homework. And our homework is to meet with the vendor, to check and ensure that our contractor, our use policies, the way that we capture data and the toggles that we have set on and the allowances that we have within our policies are all set in a way that continue to align. We have met numerous times. We have direct connection to the top leadership at FLOC, all the way down to our individual representatives who get back to us within a day's worth of time, 2 days worth of time. Every single law enforcement leader in our state, that is working on this have access, and FLOC has come around and talked to us, and we have had an opportunity to share what we demand and we expect to see. And I will share that FLOC has heard from our council, has heard from us about specific contract language that we expect to see in our contracts. For example, as we work through our fixed PTZ camera contracts with them, we asked for some additional terms to protect us and our sanctuary city values. They offered to not only change that for that contracting process, but to open up and also apply that language to their ALPR contracts that we have with them. So we know that we have a direct line to bring our complaints to see remedies, and we also have language built into our contracts that allow us to separate from that contracting relationship with FLOC if we do not believe they're upholding our community values and the direction that we have from our council.
Next question.